I remember the exact moment it happened, the sound of my phone buzzing against the wooden table in the quiet of my living room. At first, I thought it was just another routine message, maybe a meme or one of those Merry Christmas greetings that I always rolled my eyes at. But when I unlocked the screen, my stomach dropped. It was a text from my cousin. Just one line. Christmas is canceled this year. Don't come over. I stared at it, unable to move. My fingers hovered over the phone, unsure if I should call back or delete it, unsure if I had even read it. Right. Canceled? Wait, canceled? That doesn't even make sense. I muttered under my breath, feeling a cold flush creeping up my neck. How can Christmas, our Christmas, just not happen for me? My mind spun in circles, replaying every holiday memory. The smell of pine needles, the crackle of the fireplace, the laughter echoing through the house. None of that felt real anymore. The room felt suddenly too quiet, like the walls were closing in. I could hear the faint hum of the heater struggling against the winter chill, the distant cars crunching over icy streets outside, the lingering scent of coffee from my cup, forgotten and growing cold on the table. Even the sunlight, weak and pale through the frost-coated window, seemed hesitant, as if it knew I'd just been shoved out of the warmth I always took for granted that I tried to make sense of it. Was it a joke? Maybe someone thought it was funny to mess with me. But my heart didn't cooperate. Instead, it thudded hard against my ribs, each beat screaming betrayal. I could feel my eyes prickle, that familiar sting of confusion and hurt settling deep in my chest. I wanted to scream, to call someone, to shake the world back into the right shape, but all I could do was sit there, frozen, staring at the words on my phone like they were some cruel mistake I hadn't yet understood. Outside, the neighborhood carried on like nothing had changed. Kids skating on icy driveways, neighbors hanging lights in bright, cheerful clusters, the world wrapped in the familiar joy I suddenly felt barred from. And inside, I sat there, caught between disbelief and heartbreak, trying to grasp a holiday that suddenly felt like it belonged to everyone else but me. After staring at my phone for what felt like hours, I realized I couldn't just sit there, waiting for the world to decide my Christmas for me. So, I tried to make the day mine, even if it was just a shadow of what it should have been. I pulled out the small artificial tree I had shoved in the closet last year, the one with a few bent branches and lights that flickered unevenly. As I plugged it in, the soft glow of the tiny bulbs lit up the corner of my apartment, painting weak shadows on the walls. It was pathetic, really, but I clung to it. I needed something to feel normal, even if the normal was just me pretending that I started decorating, placing ornaments one by one, my fingers lingering on each one, tracing the faded glitter and chipped paint. I half smiled, thinking about the Christmases when I was younger, when I would spend hours helping untangle lights or carefully hanging stockings. My mom's laughter echoing in my memory made my chest ache. I wondered if this was what it felt like to be truly invisible, watching life happen from the outside while everyone else seemed to belong somewhere I didn't. I put on a playlist, low and soothing, the kind of carols that don't demand cheer but hum quietly in the background, like a soft sigh. I poured myself a cup of cocoa, the steam rising and curling against my face, carrying the faint smell of chocolate and cinnamon. I wrapped my hands around the mug, seeking warmth, hoping it could fill the hollow space inside that no lights or music could reach. I tried to convince myself that maybe it was okay, that maybe I could make this day special alone. But the words felt hollow even as I thought them. I baked cookies next, more out of habit than hope. The oven heated the small kitchen, and the rich smell of sugar and butter filled the space. I watched them rise, golden and perfect, and for a brief moment, I imagined someone sitting across from me, laughing as we bit into them, and my stomach sank. I caught myself thinking, why am I even doing this? No one's going to eat them. No one's even here. The thought cut sharper than I expected that I moved around the apartment like a ghost, putting up decorations, wiping down surfaces, and trying to fill every corner with some semblance of celebration. The cold winter air pressed against the windows, making the warm glow of the tree feel fragile, like it could flicker out at any second. Outside, the distant hum of the neighborhood carried on, a dog barking, a car engine starting, the faint sound of laughter from somewhere far away. Everything was moving, everything alive, and yet I felt suspended in a bubble of silence and solitude. By the time I sank onto the couch, mug in hand, I realized I was holding on to something that was never truly mine to begin with. I was pretending, performing Christmas for myself, while somewhere else, the real celebration I had hoped to be part of was happening without me. And even as I tried to shake it off, a tiny, nagging thought crept in. Maybe this was the first Christmas I'd be forced to admit that I didn't belong there anymore, that I tried to distract myself with music, cookies, even the flickering lights on the small tree, but my mind refused to cooperate. It kept drifting back to the way things used to be, to the laughter, the warmth, the sense that Christmas was ours together. I could almost hear my uncle's voice telling the same corny jokes he'd made every year. See my cousin pretending to be annoyed as we argued over who got the biggest slice of pie. Those memories were supposed to comfort me, but tonight they felt like salt in an open wound that I caught myself replaying the last Christmas we all spent together. The tree was tall, ornaments gleaming, a pile of presents threatening to topple over. In the corner, I remember handing my mom a small gift I'd stayed up late wrapping, thinking it was perfect. She smiled, hugged me tightly, and said something about how thoughtful I was. I laughed along with everyone else, feeling that warm, familiar sense of belonging. And now nothing. That scene, once so full of joy, now felt distant and unreachable, like a photograph that had faded over time that a part of me wanted to believe. It was a mistake. Maybe someone sent the wrong text. Maybe it was a joke. But deep down I knew. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, a gnawing, twisting knot that whispered truths I wasn't ready to hear. I had been left out, and somehow, somewhere, the people I cared about most had decided that this year, Christmas could happen just fine without me. The doubts began piling on themselves. Had I done something wrong? Was it something I said, something I didn't say? I went over every interaction in my head, searching for the invisible line I had crossed. Every memory became a question. Did I overstep? Did I annoy them? Was I ever really part of this? And with each thought, the room seemed to grow colder. The soft glow of the lights less comforting, as if the universe itself was highlighting my exclusion that I sank deeper into the couch, clutching my mug like it was a lifeline. Steam rose and fogged up the nearby window, blurring the world outside into streaks of white and gray. I imagined the sounds of laughter beyond that glass, music, clinking dishes, conversations I wasn't allowed to hear. And in that moment, the loneliness wasn't just emotional. It felt physical. It wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, cold and suffocating, reminding me that memories could only take me so far. Yet, even in that hollow ache, a small flicker of determination sparked. Maybe I needed to see it with my own eyes, to confront the reality that had been sent to me in such a blunt, cruel way. Maybe the only way to move forward was to step out into the cold, to leave my apartment, and find out exactly how much Christmas was really canceled. I sat on the edge of my couch, staring at the small, flickering tree, and felt a strange mix of dread and determination twisting inside me. Part of me wanted to stay put, to wrap myself in blankets and pretend the world outside didn't exist. It would have been easier, safer, to let the hurt fester quietly in the comfort of my apartment. But another part, the stubborn, reckless part of me, kept whispering, "You need to see it. You need to know." I shivered, not entirely from the cold. The winter air seeped in through the cracks of the window, brushing my cheeks with icy fingers, making my pulse quicken. I wrapped my coat around me and laced up my boots, each not a small act of rebellion against the numbness threatening to swallow me. As I stepped outside, the cold hit harder, biting my skin and tugging at my scarf. And I realized how long it had been since I'd felt anything so raw, so alive. I walked down the quiet streets, the crunch of snow under my boots echoing in the empty night. Streetlights stretched shadows across the sidewalks, and the faint smell of smoke from someone's chimney mingled with the sharp, clean scent of frost. The neighborhood seemed ordinary, unchanged, but I felt like an intruder in a world that had moved on without me. Every passing car, every muffled laugh in the distance, felt like a reminder that somewhere, the celebration I'd been told didn't exist was very much alive. And yet, with every step, I told myself it wasn't too late. Maybe someone would notice me at the door. Maybe they'd realize this was a mistake, that it wasn't supposed to be like this. I imagined what I would say, rehearsing the words in my mind. Anger, hurt, confusion, all tangled together in a way that no polite conversation could ever contain. I deserve to know. I deserve to be there. I repeated over and over, like a mantra, trying to summon courage I didn't feel by the time I reached the familiar street. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought it might give me away. The house loomed ahead, bathed in warm light, windows glowing against the darkness, the sounds of voices and music spilling into the night. And for a moment, just a brief flicker of hope, I allowed myself to imagine that it really was a mistake. That maybe the door would open, and someone would rush out, smiling, saying, "Surprise. We just wanted to see you react." But deep down, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling, the quiet, insistent doubt gnawing at the edges of my mind. Whatever waited on the other side of that door wasn't going to match the version of Christmas I had carried with me all these years. And yet, I stepped forward anyway, boots crunching over the frost, hand hovering over the doorknob, heart tight in my chest, bracing for the truth I already feared that I froze in place the moment I reached the porch, my breath fogging in the frigid air as I pressed my hand lightly against the frosted window. The warmth inside hit me like a punch, golden light spilling over the floorboards, flickering against the walls, and the faint smell of baked cookies curling out through the cracks in the door. And there they were, my family, laughing, moving, celebrating. Without me, my stomach twisted. My eyes darted across the room, trying to make sense of it. My cousin was holding a plate of something that smelled like my mom's famous stuffing. My uncle leaned back in his chair mid-laugh, and the tree in the corner gleamed, taller and brighter than my tiny one back at my apartment. Every little detail, the sparkle of ornaments, the way my brother's hand brushed over the rim of a glass, the way the firelight danced across familiar faces, was a reminder that I wasn't part of this scene. I felt like a ghost, standing on the outside, watching something that should have belonged to me, moving and breathing without me. I leaned closer, pressing my forehead against the cold glass, hoping maybe the warmth of their celebration would reach me somehow, but it didn't. The laughter felt sharp, cutting. They don't even know I'm here, I thought, my voice barely audible to myself. They don't even care. The betrayal hit in waves, heavier than I imagined it could. Every memory of shared holidays, the excitement of opening presents, the small arguments over who got the biggest piece of pie, the warmth of being together, now felt like a lie, like a story told to someone else. I remember the smell of pine from their tree mixing with the rich scent of food, the clinking of dishes, and the soft hum of a Christmas playlist in the background. Each sound was a reminder of the world that continued without me. I wanted to turn away, to run back into the cold comfort of my apartment, but I couldn't. Part of me needed to witness it, to see it with my own eyes, even if it was painful. For a long moment, I just stood there, hand on the window, breath shallow, heart hammering, caught between disbelief and heartbreak. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that it had to be a mistake, but deep down, the truth was unavoidable. They were celebrating, laughing, making memories, and I was not invited. I was nothing more than a shadow on the other side of the glass, invisible to the people who once made me feel like I belonged. That I stepped back from the window, my hand trembling as if the cold outside could somehow shake me awake from this nightmare. The light spilling from their house felt like a spotlight on all the ways I had been excluded, and suddenly, the door didn't feel like a threshold to hope. It felt like a barrier between me and the world I thought I belonged to. My chest tightened, each breath shallow, caught somewhere between anger and heartbreak. That I told myself to knock, to enter and demand answers. But my feet felt like they were moving through water. And yet, somewhere deep down, I knew I had to face it. I raised my hand to the doorknob, the cold steel biting against my skin, and pushed the door open slowly. The warmth hit me immediately, washing over me in a way that made the absence of welcome sting even more sharply. I stepped in, my eyes scanning the room, each familiar face a reminder of the betrayal. They saw me, or maybe they didn't. There was a brief pause, a flicker of recognition that quickly dissolved back into the comfort of their own world. No one moved to pull me in, no one said anything. I stood there, frozen, trying to find my voice. "Hey, what's going on?" My words felt small, swallowed by the laughter, the clinking of dishes, the music. It was like trying to speak underwater, every syllable muffled, every attempt to reach them ignored. The hurt welled up, sudden and sharp, and I could feel my eyes sting. This is real. They're really doing this. Without me. Every memory of shared Christmas mornings, every promise of family togetherness, every laugh I thought meant something. It all came crashing down in that instant. My mind raced with questions, accusations, disbelief. How could they do this? Did I ever matter? Were all those years just enough to forget me now? I could smell the rich aroma of dinner wafting through the air, see the soft glow of the tree reflecting in their eyes, and feel the unspoken truth pressing against me like a heavy weight. I wanted to lash out, to scream, to shake someone until they admitted it was wrong, but my body refused. I was trapped between the desire to confront and the realization that confrontation might not give me what I needed. It wouldn't undo the exclusion. It wouldn't bring me back into their world, and it certainly wouldn't erase the sting of being forgotten. So I stood there, silent, letting the truth wash over me in waves, tasting the bitter edge of betrayal with every breath. I realized in that moment that I couldn't force anyone to see me, to care, to remember. I could only feel, raw and exposed, and eventually decide what I would do next, whether I stayed to fight or walked away. Carrying this heartbreak with me, as I stepped away from the crowded warmth of the living room, my mind began to drift. Back to other moments, smaller, quieter, yet no less painful. I remembered my last birthday, a few years ago, when I had waited all day for a single text or call from one of them, only to realize everyone had forgotten until someone casually mentioned it in passing. The sting then had felt like a small bruise. Now, in the glow of this Christmas betrayal, it throbbed with fresh intensity that I could see it all again. The cake half eaten, my hopeful face pressed against the frosting, and the way my cousin had shrugged as if birthdays, like Christmas, could come and go without me. Back then, I told myself it was just an oversight, that people were busy, that it wasn't personal. But the memory now pressed in on me, clearer, sharper, undeniable. Patterns I had ignored were suddenly screaming. The jokes I was never part of, the plans I wasn't invited to, the way laughter sometimes froze when I entered a room. Another memory hit me. A Christmas morning years ago, when I had pulled the last gift from under the tree, my heart racing with excitement. I remembered the brief flicker of disappointment on my mom's face, the hurried, "You'll love it anyway," and how I had forced a smile, pretending that everything was okay. At the time, I had pushed it aside, thinking maybe I was imagining things, maybe I was overreacting. Now, each of those tiny, overlooked moments made perfect sense, like puzzle pieces finally snapping together into a picture I hadn't wanted to see. That I sank onto the nearest chair, the weight of these memories pressing down, making it hard to breathe. The sounds of the party, clinking glasses, murmurs of conversation, the faint Christmas music, mixed with the echoes of the past, a dissonant symphony that left me dizzy. I could smell the same scents I had smelled in those earlier holidays, the cookies, the pine, the faint smoke from candles, and it felt almost cruel, as if the universe was reminding me of everything I had been denied. Tears stung my eyes, hot and unbidden, and I realized that the hurt I felt now was magnified because it wasn't just about today. It was the accumulation of years, the slow layering of small exclusions that had quietly told me I didn't fully belong. And yet, even in that raw, aching space, a strange clarity emerged. I saw the pattern, I understood the truth, and I knew that I could no longer pretend it didn't exist. I couldn't erase the past, but maybe, just maybe, I could decide how much it would define me going forward. I stood up slowly, my legs heavy, like they were filled with lead. The warmth of the house hit me one last time, almost taunting me with the laughter, the clinking of glasses, the ease of being included in something I had always imagined as mine. I opened my mouth to speak, maybe to demand an explanation, maybe to voice the avalanche of hurt rolling through me, but no words came. My throat felt tight, my voice swallowed by the weight of disbelief. Instead, I turned. Step by step, I moved toward the door, each footfall echoing in the hallway like a soft, reluctant drumbeat. The cold outside rushed to greet me as I crossed the threshold, biting at my cheeks, tugging at my scarf, and for a moment I felt alive only because of the shock of it. I paused on the porch, hand hovering over the doorknob, as if one last hesitation could undo everything I had just seen. But it couldn't as I walked down the snowy street. The crunch of frost under my boots was the only sound that kept me tethered to reality. Behind me, their laughter faded, muffled by walls and distance, but it lingered, a haunting reminder of exclusion. I imagined their eyes, oblivious or indifferent, carrying on as if I had never existed. My chest ached, each step heavier than the last, and a bitter thought whispered, maybe they didn't even notice I left. Maybe it's exactly as I suspected. They don't care. The neighborhood lights glimmered softly against the winter night, casting long shadows over the icy sidewalks. I walked past decorated houses, every wreath, every flickering bulb, a cruel contrast to the emptiness inside me. I tried to convince myself that walking away was strength, that I wasn't surrendering, that I was choosing my own dignity over confrontation. Yet, with each step, the numb ache in my chest refused to dissipate, settling in deeper like snow piling against an old fence. By the time I reached the end of the street, my hands were shoved deep into my pockets, my breath steaming in the cold night air, and I realized the quiet truth. Sometimes leaving is the only form of self-preservation. No words, no arguments, no pleading would fix what had already been broken. The world they inhabited without me was theirs to enjoy. For now, all I could do was walk away, carrying the hurt like a coat too heavy to shrug off, knowing that this silent exit might be the beginning of reclaiming myself. When I finally reached the quiet of my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch. The familiar hum of the heater and the soft glow of my small tree welcoming me back like an old friend. The cold had seeped through my coat and into my bones, but now, wrapped in a blanket and holding a warm mug of cocoa, I felt something I hadn't felt all day, a fragile sense of peace. It wasn't the joy I had imagined Christmas bringing, but it was mine. And for now, that was enough. I sank into the cushions, letting my hands cradle the warmth of the mug, feeling the heat seep slowly into my fingers. I turned on the tiny Christmas lights again, watching their uneven glow flicker against the walls, soft and comforting in the dim room. For the first time in hours, I allowed myself to breathe without the gnawing ache of exclusion pressing in. The apartment smelled faintly of cocoa and the lingering scent of cookies I had baked earlier, smells that reminded me that even alone, I could create small comforts for myself. That I thought about the past few hours, the messages, the exclusion, the silent heartbreak. And yet, in this stillness, I realized that the day hadn't been entirely lost. I had survived the sting of betrayal, the weight of years of subtle hurts, and I had returned to myself. That mattered. That was real. And for the first time, I allowed a small, tentative smile to brush across my face, a quiet acknowledgement that even when others forgot me, I could still remember and care for myself. That I played soft music in the background, letting the gentle melodies fill the empty corners of the apartment. I lit a candle and watched the flame dance, imagining it carrying away the heaviness of the day. I thought about the future, not about their world, not about what I had been denied, but about what I could create for myself. Even a small, solitary celebration could be beautiful if I allowed it to be. I could wrap a gift for myself, bake another batch of cookies, watch the snowfall outside, and remember that moments of peace don't always need witnesses. For the first time, I felt a quiet strength, the kind that comes from realizing that your worth doesn't depend on anyone else's. Acknowledgement. I hugged the blanket tighter around me, feeling warmth seep into my chest, and whispered to myself, "This is enough. This is mine." The cold night outside continued, the distant hum of life carrying on, but inside, I had found a small sanctuary, a space where I could grieve, reflect, and begin to heal. Night had fully settled outside by the time I finally allowed myself to sit still. The apartment was quiet, the soft glow of the tree casting long shadows across the walls, flickering gently like a heartbeat I could finally feel. I stared out the window at the street below, empty now, except for the distant glow of a few lights and the occasional swirl of snow carried by the wind. The world had kept moving, just as it always does, and so had I, albeit slower, heavier, but with a newfound awareness of my own strength. That I thought about everything that had happened. The messages, the exclusion, the laughter I wasn't part of, and the memories that had resurfaced along the way. And yet, Amid all the hurt, there was clarity. I realized that my worth wasn't defined by anyone else's acknowledgement, nor by their choices. The people I loved might falter in ways that hurt me, but I still had myself, still had the power. To create moments that mattered to me, I brewed a cup of tea this time, something soothing and warm, and curled up with a blanket. The faint scent of pine from my little tree mingled with the steam from the mug, and for the first time, I felt a quiet contentment, subtle but real. I allowed myself to smile, not a big, triumphant smile, but a small, private one, the kind that rises from within when you've weathered a storm and survived it. That I looked around at the room I had made my own, lights flickering softly, cookies lined on a plate I'd baked earlier, a little space that reflected me. For once, I didn't feel like an outsider peeking in on someone else's happiness. Instead, I felt present in my own life, holding on to what I could control, embracing the moments I could shape. I whispered to myself, barely audible, I am enough. I am here. This is mine. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in quiet serenity. I watched it, letting the stillness of the night fill me, and felt a sense of closure settle over my chest. Christmas hadn't turned out as I expected. It had been taken from me, reshaped by absence and betrayal. But in the end, I had reclaimed it in my own way. I had found solace, resilience, and a reminder that even when the world forgets you, you can still find warmth, light, and meaning within yourself.